going to be hitting us in the central U.S. And it's quite interesting what's happening with the pattern right now. We've got this moisture coming into the central U.S. So that's one ingredient. But what's happening as you go up in the atmosphere is we are getting pieces of energy coming from the West Coast. They're moving through the West Coast. But the pattern now, as you go up in the atmosphere, we looked at the surface, you have the moisture. Now we look at those mid to upper levels, we do have the storms. But you go even higher than that. Remember, the atmosphere is like a hamburger. So we start at the bottom bun, go to around the tomato layer. Now if you go to the top bun, and we look at what the jet stream is doing, the jet stream shoots way far north into Canada. And so what that's doing is it's taking all this energy and trying to toss it north. It's kind of stopping it from moving towards the east. But there is enough energy ejecting east that we are going to get some storms here under this big ridge that we have with the jet stream. But all the energy is getting kind of forced north or torn apart. And so we don't have these well-defined systems that are able to come on through. There is enough, and notice you're going to get heavier rain here a little bit farther west of the plains where some more of that energy can really lift out that moisture. So through tomorrow morning, you see the possibility of flooding with the rain that's going to come down here from California inland. And then Friday, a higher possibility into Montana of seeing heavier showers, and that actually lasts until our Friday and Saturday because our pattern is kind of stuck. We're not moving a whole lot. Denver, we see the showers and storms, temperatures trending down, which is nice. We'll be dropping over 10 degrees as we go through the long period there, and into portions of the southern plains, we will see some heavier rain right where we need it, Kelly. This is like beautifully placed thanks to the bad drought that we have here.
Yes, nice drink of water right there on the plain.
Rain throughout the state of Nebraska because we have had drought conditions. Here's a look at where we'll have severe weather. And the reason that it's a little bit stronger as you look into the western plains from North Platte down to Colby, all the way down through Dodge City, is we have a bunch of energy that is sweeping in from the west, and then it goes and gets kind of shoved north or torn apart because we have some ridging going on here in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So that's one of the reasons that the storms are not just kind of blowing eastbound. Speaking of blowing, the winds could be damaging for some of you in some of these thunderstorms, and there is a potential of 75-mile-per-hour or greater wind threat. And again, everything is going to be super localized, like Kelly was talking about with the flooding. That's how it's going to be with the rain and these thunderstorms, too. So we've got energy. You can see a nice little piece of energy here. Everything just keeps swirling in and just driving east, and then it's kind of shoved northbound. Look at this piece of energy here swirling. You see how it's kind of going north, northeast, because that's what the wind flow is doing with everything, shoving it north. And so that's why we're going to see, you know, the threat for storms, but we don't have these big systems moving through. We've got moisture coming up here. Our dew points into the 50s, even the 60s. You see the drier air as you look towards the four corners. So there is moisture to squeeze out. A few thunderstorms rumbling through Minnesota and also into Iowa this morning. And as we go through the day today, you'll see some of that energy start to fire up. And notice where we have the showers and storms back in Wyoming, back in Colorado. There's that energy trying to basically shove itself eastbound as best it can. And all those storms are going to line up for us right where we had that deepest red shading on the map, even towards Valentine, Colby. But notice as we go into the evening hours, it's like trying to go east, and it really kind of starts to fall apart as it does so. And that is our system kind of getting torn apart. So as we go through tomorrow morning, there is that possibility of flooding tomorrow again in the same areas, Jordan, because we're stuck in this pattern and it can't really shove through that ridge as it would like to.
How about stuck in
this happens here? And by the way, first things first, Manhattan is an island. A lot of people don't know that. It is an actual island, like surrounded by water. And sunset in mid-January goes across the island, but late May to mid-July, it goes right across the island like that. And it's a grid, which is, by the way, a phenomenal way to set up a city here. And so you can see that sunset right in between the buildings, right in Midtown, is where everything lines up perfectly, and you'll see a lot of people out there. Now, speaking of the sunsets have been murky. The sun's been a little more red due to all of the smoke that's been in the atmosphere thanks to all these fires. Look at this. Over 5.6 million acres have been burning with fires here. We want to take a closer look at what's happening here along the East Coast because we have seen some fires here in Nova Scotia. And because of that, some of the smoke has been getting into the East Coast, not only from our system here that's in Halifax, but also some of the stuff here from Canada too. And so that's been obscuring our view. You can see how it's a little bit of that smoke getting in. You can see it a little bit more into New England. That is due in part to our system here that is in Canada, and we had an east wind. But, Jordan, the winds will shift and start to take things out to the Atlantic, thankfully.
Steph, you think
history of the storm names that we'll be using this year. Today, we're checking off 3 names. We're going to start with Sean, which actually was replaced by Stan in 2005. Remember that year when so many storms were retired from a tropical storm and a hurricane. So here Stan did not even have a very long track, did not get very strong, but it's the flooding, which, by the way, is the #1 killer when it comes to tropical entities. Now Tropical Storm Tammy, which is a good reminder that, look at this thing, not very strong, not very long lasting, but the remnants taking it away and causing all sorts of problems for us here. So we can show you some of those rainfall totals. This thing in this little track gave us over 10 inches of rain into Georgia, 7 here into the Carolinas. So remember that these storms don't have to be a big thing in order to cause a lot of problems. So remember, don't drive through any of that flood water. And just like Tammy, Vince had only been used one systems as being American systems, but a lot of times they do affect us here, not only into Portugal and Spain, but also up into the United Kingdom. Kelly.
Yeah, it's crazy when they hold their...
Well, can you feel the heat? And no, we're not talking about the Miami heat, though they're obviously quite hot. Don't worry, we are going to see it expanding for our Wednesday, our Thursday, and on into our Friday. More than 230 million Americans will be feeling those highs above 80 degrees, so make sure you got the shades and the sunscreen ready. Another S word for you that we're keeping our eye on, the storms. Sunshine is hard to come by here into the central states. As we move through the week, we will see the threat for severe weather not only today, but it expands as we head into our tomorrow forecast. Welcome into America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Kelly Cass and Jordan Steele. Jordan, some of these storms have the threat of damaging winds and also some pretty decent hail.
Yeah, we had some storms yesterday.
That it is. So let's have a look at Florida and what we are going to be coping with. We've been having, listen, we had a good Memorial Day weekend, but there has been a lot of rain over the past 7 days. The last couple of days we've been good, but things are changing, especially as we head into our Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend. Things are going to get wet. We need it, though. I'll tell you what, things are really dry here on the west coast of Florida, and we're anywhere from like 3 to 5 inches below average on rainfall, so we need it. We could take it, and we are going to get it. The GFS has heavier rain down towards South Florida, Okeechobee, and southbound. So remember the disturbance that we've been dealing with in the mid-Atlantic? That is this energy. That's going to exit, and we're going to be replaced by another one. And if you remember, this actually swung through Florida and then came up into the Carolinas. And now it's finally, I mean, we've been dealing with this forever. Now we have a new disturbance, and this is going to be coming across Florida, and it's going to reflect down to the surface. Sometimes you have disturbances in the upper levels of the atmosphere, mid-levels of the atmosphere, and they don't necessarily reflect down to the surface into this well-defined low, but this one looks like it's going to, and so we are going to have that lift going on through the atmosphere. That means a lot of moisture coming in and some stronger winds as this comes in as well. Everything will be sweeping from west to east here from the Gulf of Mexico. So you're coming from a moisture source. You've got a moisture source all around while it continues. And so that means rain. Mainly for Florida, portions of the southeast will see a little bit of rain kind of dipping in and out, especially with that daytime heating, the diurnal heating. Thursday through Friday, the possibility of flooding. And you know, in Florida, things can flood real quick with those heavy downpours, but thankfully we have that sandy soil, so it usually drains out fairly quickly. But whenever it happens, it can hit you hard here. And of course, with the changing climate, we're seeing, things even worse here into South Florida with everything just getting wetter. And notice all the way through, it's going to be nonstop in Jordan. We just got out of school down here, and now we get the rain. No thanks. Come on.
'Tis the season, and I know.
I'm like, I'm worn out by that system. Been dealing with it since the end of last week, midweek. It's going through Florida. All right, so what are we going to be dealing with now? Well, we do have moisture that's going to be flowing right up into the plains. We're seeing that. It's coming up, okay? So that is one thing that we have. And then we have energy that's spinning in from the west coast. But you would think, okay, that energy is just going to keep going from west to east because that's typically what it does. But what's happening is you have that little trough, and then our jet stream goes way to the north, like way up into Canada. And so this trough is not able to continue to dig east. And these systems are either kind of like getting torn apart while they go into the plains, or their energy is getting shoved northbound. It's a little bit of both. There's a lot going on. So with that said, we are going to see the threat for some stronger storms to come in. Here's that disturbance. You're like, okay, yes. Oh, no, you can see some of it gets shoved north. Some of it's going a little bit east, but gets torn apart. It doesn't really stay together nicely. So there is enough energy to kick off storms, and some of them could be strong, but it's not like we have this nice little beautiful ball of energy that's going to be swinging east. We could see heavier rain, Montana, as we look up into Wyoming as well. And then that flooding forecast is kind of in a lot of places, anywhere from California all the way up into North Dakota. With those heavier downpours and those localized downpours, we could get flooding. And there's a good chance, especially as we head later in the day around those sunset hours, that's when the storms are going to fire up and give us that threat for flooding. So through Friday, even Saturday morning, Montana, Wyoming. By the way, if you have trouble remembering which is which, Montana and Wyoming, so that's always the easy way to remember is Montana and Wyoming. Montana makes M, Wyoming makes a W. So that's the easy way, and then they kind of touch in the middle. Back to the maps. Denver, we'll see warmth. Notice we cool off back down into the 60s here as we head into the weekend. But Kelly, stormy day after stormy day after stormy day.
Steph, you should be a geography teacher.
The worst drought conditions right now is just looking at the drought monitor into western portions of the state. I mean, the whole state needs it, but the western part is the worst. So we have the chance of storms today, from North Platte all the way down to the panhandle of Texas, and the possibility of damaging winds. Damaging wind and hail are the biggest threats. We could see winds 75 miles per hour or greater, and we have a little swirl. This is going to be with us really until kind of Friday. It takes its sweet time coming all the way through. Now, ahead of that, we do have blips and blobs of energy. This one is going to swing in, and that's going to provide energy. But again, it hits this wall of this ridge that we have here and kind of falls apart. Notice up here into North Dakota, you see that spin there. Everything is getting shoved north because of our flow and basically the setup that we have. So moisture is coming up, 50 and 60 degree dew points for us right now. And you see we have some storms into Minnesota. Some lightning coming through, some cloud cover because of that moisture out there. But as we head through the day today, notice as we go into the afternoon hours, we start to heat things up, and that's when things start to pop. Eastern Kansas, and remember, there's energy in the west, and so that's going to help develop our storms. And they try to shove eastbound, and they do. And so as we head into this evening, we'll see heavier rain, again, right where we need it. Unfortunately, could cause some damaging winds and lightning with it, too. And as this blows east, it's going to lose that energy because, yeah, you'll still see some storms, but it's not like it's going to be as bad. So here's the possibility of flooding through tomorrow morning. It's just going to be a very localized situation for us with those heavier downpours. Things expand tomorrow, but it's right in the same area because we're stuck in this same pattern. Jordan.
Yeah, Florida
is an actual island. Apparently, it wasn't perfect last night, but by those images, to me, it looked perfect. Tonight is like the perfect night, so we'll see more of it. Of course, the sun angle changes as we go through the year. Sunset mid-January is going to be going across, and then this we go, boom, perpendicular. And so it lines up right along those buildings, and you are going to see it. Midtown Manhattan is actually the best way to do it. That's where I think it's like kind of most square, if you will, the island. So that's probably why you get some of the best views for it there. And we are going to see nice weather. So there's going to be no clouds to have to deal with here if you are going to do Manhattan Henge. All right, here's a look at all the active wildfires in Canada. Over 5.6 million burning from east to west, really across the entire country. And we want to zoom a little bit closer here into places like Nova Scotia and Halifax, because that's where we have one fire burning. And you can see the smoke from this clearly going south into the Atlantic there. But I will say that with a little bit of an east wind, look at some of the smoke actually getting into the East Coast from our fire there. And so that is maybe going to for Manhattan Henge even maybe might give you a much brighter sunset when you're looking at it with a little bit of smoke filter there as well. So that'll be something new and different, Jordan, perhaps as the sun is setting.
That'd be cool for the
Names we'll be using this year, because remember, each list is the same list every 6 years unless a name is retired. And today we're actually talking about a name that was retired in 2005. Stan was retired in 2005 and replaced with Sean. So let's talk about Stan and why it was retired. It was just a good warning to remember that a tropical storm or even a Category 1 hurricane can cause tremendous damage and a huge loss of life. So look at the two landfalls that this made, again, only as a tropical storm and a Cat 1 hurricane, and 200 people actually died from this one. Now to Tropical Storm Tammy, which has been Tammy. Doesn't look that impressive, right? Very short track. Not very intense, but it still did tremendous amounts of rainfall here. You're talking 7 to over 10 inches of rain. Darien, Georgia, look at that, almost 14.5 inches of rain. So you don't need, again, a big system, a long-lasting system in order to cause problems. And if you do run into any water, make sure you're not, eating food that's been in it, and you don't want to drive through it as well. Now, just like Tammy, going all the way to Spain and Portugal. It's not that we don't typically get affected. We can here and there, Kelly, also up into the UK, but usually the storms are going in this direction.
Right. But notice the time of year, too.
Can you feel the heat? No, I'm not talking about the Miami Heat, though. They're obviously on fire, making it to the finals. Don't worry, you're going to feel it. Look at Wednesday. As we head into our Thursday and as we head into our Friday, by then we're talking nearly 240 million of us feeling our highs above 80 degrees. So you want to make sure that you've got your shades and also your sunscreen handy. Now, one thing that this heat is going to help do is kick off the storms. And we are seeing those potentially in the central states, not only today, but also as we head into tomorrow. It's expanding, and there's a potential for some flooding rain and some very gusty winds as well. Welcome into America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Kelly Cass and Jordan Steele. Jordan, let's talk about what these storms have already done, and we could probably see a repeat of video like this coming in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Rain that we've seen in Florida. Listen, we had a great Memorial Day weekend. It was dry. Remember that system that came through and then went to the mid-Atlantic? But the rain is coming back for us. Unfortunately, we're going to see more showers here as we look Wednesday through Sunday. You'll see rain on both coasts. We really need it on the west coast of Florida. That's where things are a little bit on the drier side. And the GFS has it kind of heavier from Lake Okeechobee southbound. Though I heard, Jordan, you called it Lake O earlier.
Yeah, is that wrong?
Never heard that in my life.
Oh, really?
Have you heard people call it that?
Yeah.
You have? Interesting. So that's
maybe Jim just says it and it got embedded into my head.
Maybe Jim says it. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. My South Florida people. I was born and raised in South Florida, and we always called it Lake Okeechobee. It makes sense you call it Lake O because it's such a long name.
Right.
So I'm curious if anyone else calls it Lake O, if that's
maybe
just something that's been made up by Jim, apparently, that Jordan heard him say. So I'm curious. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know if you've ever heard or you've ever called this Lake O. We've always said the entire name. All right, back to the maps here. This is the disturbance that we were following last week that went through Florida, cleared out, gave us a beautiful Memorial Day, then went into the Carolinas and moving northbound. Our next system is going to be slowly, and I mean slowly, moving across the area. So it's going to be a multi-day event with moisture source. It's going to be over a moisture source. There's another moisture source. You have the Gulf, the Atlantic, everything kind of coming around. And so here's the kind of impending energy that's going to make its way across Florida, reflect all the way down to the surface. So Wednesday morning, you're going to start to see things go northbound here over the entire state, the peninsula, the panhandle, all the way back over, really along the I-10 corridor. Heavier rain coming down. Don't forget, though, we have the sandy soil. I did a science with Seth on the different soil types, and the water just flows right through that sandy soil a lot faster than it does the clay soil like you see into the south. But Jordan, it is day after day after day, and we're just out of school, and now we're going to have to be inside.
And on the cusp of
on the Weather Channel.
I know, and they've got the smallest little things.
And we always think, like, what could that be worth? Well, apparently a lot.
That's wild.
Well done. Ahead on America's Morning Headquarters, a phenomenon in New York has stormy weather. We're going to get it here through the plains. We've got loads of moisture that's coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. So that's going to give us a little something in the atmosphere to squeeze out. And then we have energy coming from the west. And notice as it does so, let's see if I can back this up real quick. quick to also show you. I want you to look at the beginning of this picture. And, oh, no, now I really messed up, didn't I? Maybe I'm not set to back up.
Oh.
Look how nice of a ball this is, and then it comes east, and you're going to see this. Thanks, Jillian. You're the best as a weather producer. See how it just kind of falls apart and gets ripped apart? That's because of the whole pattern that we have. So you see the winds are going like this, and we go up and over. So as all this energy heads east, it can't really break through this ridge. It gets through it, but it gets kind of torn up, and some of it's going to get pulled northbound. And that means that you're going to get storms, but we don't have this like huge, well-defined system. But it is enough in order to cause rain and to cause showers. That's why you got to be a good team member, because you're always going to need help from somebody else in this world at some point. Jilly, thank you so much for that. Here's the rain that's going to come down. This is through Sunday. Montana, Wyoming, by the way, we really need the rain. Nebraska and then western Kansas really needs the rain. So we'll get it, the potential for flooding there. Through Thursday morning, we do have the threat for flooding from California all the way up into Montana, also Wyoming. And remember, some of this could be heavily localized. Watch for those rivers, watch for those streams into Saturday morning. Not much is changing because everything's kind of blocked up here. Never a good feeling. And that means that we're going to see rain into the same areas. So Denver, showers and storms. Notice our temperatures down into the 60s, Kelly, as we head into the weekend, and a little more sun peeking through as well.
Yay, sun. And if you are...
I don't think we're going to get rid of the drought, but we are certainly going to see the threat for some storms. And everything is basically driving in from the west, and then it kind of falls apart as it crosses the plains or gets shot northbound. That's what we're dealing with. In these storms, not only could you get the threat for hail and rain that makes you wish you had another level on your windshield wipers, but you could see winds up to 75 miles an hour or greater. So we have puffs of energy. That's going to keep us stormy. This low pressure is going to take its sweet time. I mean, literally, it's going to take through Friday to come here, and it gets also kind of torn apart because the storms are either getting pushed northbound, like you see this one here, or when they come east, they aren't as well defined. And so you'll get storms, just not this big ball of energy coming across. So our dew point temperatures, there's moisture out there. Remember, you need mid-50s or higher in order to get severe weather. Few, like just batches of lightning and thunderstorms here on the border of Minnesota and also into Iowa. And as we head through the day today, notice the timing above my head as we get into the afternoon hours. That's when things start to pop off with some of that daytime heating. And then there's that energy. You see how it's just kind of all messy for us? But within this, you're going to see some gusty winds here into Nebraska. And I mean, I can't tell you, we are just so desperate for the rain here that we'll take whatever we can get. And then that will continue to crawl eastbound as we head through Wednesday morning. But notice how it kind of falls apart and we still see a few storms. So we'll get it. We just don't have this super well-organized system coming on through. We have that possibility of flooding, and then tomorrow, yet again, because we're stuck in the same pattern, we're going to get storms right in the same area. And what do we have to do? We wait for that daytime heating, and boom, there we go. Little more action as we head into tomorrow, Jordan. And don't forget, we have that upper-level system coming in, and east of that is where you're going to get some of that ascent, too.
We have a rinse.
Island of Manhattan, and yes, it is an island. A lot of people don't realize that. But notice, this is the Hudson River here. There's the East River, and right there it cuts. You've got the island right there. So that is the island of Manhattan. That's Central Park. You can see it right there in the center of the island. Mid-July, that sun sets across, but then as you head to late May, mid-July, sorry, that was mid-January, late May, mid-July, it goes perpendicular across the island, and it gets nice and square there in Midtown, and so that's where you really get the best view of it, looking, of course, back towards Jersey, which is west, and that's where the sun sets, and it is a really cool experience. A lot of people get into the streets. You don't have to worry about any cloud cover, maybe a little smoke, however, but that could make it a really bright, red kind of just a different look in the atmosphere. We have fires burning across Canada, over 5.6 million acres, but we're getting some smoke here on the East Coast from our fires here around Halifax. And notice the smoke You can see it coming off with our visible satellite, but some of that has drifted its way into New England. So not only are you seeing it in New York, you might be seeing it as well into places like Boston. There's some of that smoke for you. As we go through this afternoon, we might get a little bit of that kind of haziness in the sky. So if you are taking pictures, keep that in mind. Jordan,
well,
the names that were going to be on the list this year. And for today, we're going to tackle Sean, Tammy, and Vince, which leaves just Whitney, which is an interesting one. We'll look back at Whitney tomorrow for our last day before we head into our hurricane season. But let's just first start with Sean here. This replaces Stan from 2005. Remember, 2005 was just an outrageous year with so many storms. But this one is name, because it was that damaging and deadly. It was a hurricane and a tropical storm when it made landfall. Look how short-lived it is. So you don't need these big, long-lasting storms in order to get names retired. That was it. That's what Stan did in 2005. Now let's go to Tammy and talk. Not a very strong storm, not a very long-lasting storm, and it gave us huge rainfall. We're talking 7, 10+ inches here from South Carolina to Georgia. Look at Darien, almost 14.5 inches of rain with this one. That is just huge. So if you do encounter rain, if you do encounter water, remember it's the #1 killer. Don't drive through it. Don't drink it. Don't use food that was in it. Just stay away from all of it. Now, just like Tammy, Vince has storms come off of Africa, and then they head westbound. This one went east. And so this one's definitely a little bit of an anomaly here. Kelly, can you imagine for, your vacation, you go to Spain and Portugal and you get hit by a storm?
Yeah, and so late in the season, too.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.